Dear Harstem, can you legit tell me how I lost this? My army value is superior, my work account is higher, I have carriers and storms, and he wins with hydras? If he had beat me with Corruptor, Viper, Lurker, or Ultra, fine. But pure hydras? And people think this game isn't broken? I started off doing the Gatewayman build Hero uses. It opens Stargate into ground units. The plan was... Okay. The Gatewayman build Hero uses is very specific of a thing. And saying it opens Stargate into ground units to cover what the Gatewayman Hero does is like saying I made Gordon Ramsay's chocolate cake because I put some flour and chocolate in a bowl and then I tossed it in the microwave. Yes, technically some of the ingredients that are in Gordon Ramsay's chocolate cake are in the bowl in your microwave, but it isn't exactly the same thing. Like the Gatewayman that Hero uses, when we talk about that, usually it's low gas, it has multiple forges, and a high eco with a very fast fort base. Saying that it opens Stargate into ground units is something that scares me, because that is not what the Gatewayman build that Hero uses is at all. But we'll let it rest for now. The plan was to go ground units, but then I saw he was not droning his third, so I tacked into carriers and High Templars since my ground army wouldn't beat a Mass Hydra Roach army. But Mass Hydra have such high DPS, interceptors don't stand a chance. There is no time to let interceptors recharge, my base will die, and then it's still game over. I can indeed say my comp counters Hydras, so I should win. That's how the game is supposed to work. The Zerg having 2-2 on ground against +1 attack carriers shouldn't matter much. He's on cheap tier 2 units, so strong, tier 3 units like carriers and High Templar should win anyway. For the amount of money and time carriers cost to make, the idea that 2-2 Hydras beat +1 carriers with High Templar support is beyond stupid. If that's the case, the game is indeed broken. It's practically impossible to get 3-3-3 carriers unless you started out going for SkyToss from the start of the game, but that is no longer viable after the Void Ray patch. I honestly don't get it. I can't see how this is anything other than broken. I made less mistakes than my opponent. Are Hydras Imba? Or do I suck? Name, table, race, Protoss, in the Diamond League with 3500 MMR, and the server is North America. And the question is pretty simple. Are Hydras in balance? Or does he suck? And we're here to find out. Alright, here we are in the game on Inside and Out between Table, I love that nickname by the way, it's a very good nickname, and Bill, which is probably just Bill's actual name, our friendly neighborhood Zerg, opening up with I think this was a 16 pool, while we have a post-gateway scout coming out of Table. Now there was one thing in the balance complaint form that actually still pissed me off a little bit. Just when I think back, well, there were many things that pissed me off a little bit. But there was a line that I've kind of went over that I didn't really mention, but I do want to talk about it. And that is when Table said that the moment he scouted very little drones at the third base, he decided to tack into High Templar and Carrier. Now, that is a response that makes no sense whatsoever. And he put it in there like this was a common way to deal with all-ins. So if there are no drones at a third base, this means that most likely there's a quick attack coming your way. How is the response to a quick attack trying to tack into the unit that takes the longest to produce out of the entire Protoss arsenal, not counting the mothership? The carrier. The carrier takes freaking, what is it, 65 seconds to build. You need a fleet beacon before it as well. How is that a reasonable response to someone 2-base all-inning you? That's like saying, oh, I need to be somewhere in 10 minutes from now, and, you know, if I drive by car, I'll make it in 8. And then you decide to crawl instead. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, the response. I like that he managed to make the analysis that, hey, very little drones at the third base probably means something is happening and I need to react to it. But then the actual response makes no sense, and I can't even really find a justification in my head for it either. And honestly, he says carriers and High Templars in the balance complaint form. High Templars also make no sense, because High Templars take a while. First, you need the Templar archives, you need to research Storm. It's all extremely expensive. And you also need to gather energy. So you need to invest a lot of resources and a lot of time before Templar actually have any defensive benefit whatsoever. Units that are good against quick all-ins are things like sentries, batteries and cannons, immortals, high damage output. They can, they can take a bit of a hit as well. Very good defensively in combination with sentries and static defense. That is the type of unit you want to be building. Maybe even throw out a Void Ray if you are opening Stargate like we're seeing here. This is one hell of an opener, by the way. Double Zealot with a battery as well. That's because this was a pool first. And my good friend Table has never watched my guide on how to beat every single pool first. And thus he comes up with a response himself, which is obviously subpar, but he did not manage to die. Well, I mean, it would be fairly difficult to die against 2 links that got built from the pool first, but he's in an okay spot. Bill is also playing a build that is not a build. Like if Lambo would see this, he'd probably have a heart attack immediately, or he starts shaking at a very high pace because he's getting very upset by this. This is a 2-base Roach build. I would not recommend this if you're a Zerg player and you're watching. Low queen count, low drone count. Roaches suck at attacking. Roaches kind of suck in general. Yeah, this is just not very good. 3rd base of the Zerg is at the exact same time here as the 3rd base of the Protoss. So the Protoss naturally is going to be ahead. Protoss, by the way, hadn't scouted that there was no 3rd base, so they just kind of blindly took a 3rd base. Could have been getting Nidus all-in, no vision in the main base. Could have been getting, well, actually just Nidus all-in. It's not like there's too many 2-base all-ins. 2-base Nidus swarm host maybe, which is technically a semi-macro build, but also not really. It's also kind of all-in, so yeah, I can't really think of anything Zerg can do on 2-base. You have like a 2-base Hydra Ling all-in. Would technically be possible, but not very popular. Also just not very good. All right, let's take a look at this this gateway man that our good friend Table spoke about. Let's have a look at this. Well, first of all, we're lacking probes, which is bad. Continuously not building probes is a mistake with a build that is focused on high economy, high production, like lots of infrastructure, and quick expanding all over the map, while at the same time trying to deny your opponent's 5th base and harassing drones on the 3rd and 4th base, and maybe even getting a prism in towards the main. Don't forget that when you're playing Heroes Gateway Man style, often you want to be playing it with 2 forges as well, because you're relying on such basic and primitive units. And you know what the beauty is of basic and primitive units with good upgrades is that they actually can perform well against higher tier units. This is something that is interesting to note. It's something that Table also noted in his balanced complaint form, and something that he complained about the Hydra being a tier 2 unit with good upgrades being capable of taking out the carrier. So just keep that in the back of your head for now. So here we get the scout. I think this is the scout that gets talked about, right? Little drones, or in this case, no drones at the 3rd base. He's going to scout the other. I actually really like this. You know, this is actual good scouting. I'm fairly impressed by this. I just wanna, I'm gonna pause here for a second and just kind of explain what we saw here. And especially for diamond level, I think this was really cool. Oracle flies in, sees the lack of any drones on the 3rd base, realizes that something is up, flies over towards this location to make sure there's no base over there with drones, which I think is a fantastic call. What if the 4th base is the one being saturated? I mean, it is not the highest level, people do weird things all the time. Sees that there is no 4th base, flies into the main, throws out a revelation, and rather than trying to kill half a drone or fight with the queen, just flies away. I really, really like this entire sequence out of this Oracle. The scouting is absolutely flawless here. Very good calls, and something you don't honestly see that much at this specific level. 3500 MMR in America. I don't think this is supposed to happen. Now, the response here. What was said again? Right, it was said that the moment you scouted the lack of drones on the 3rd, you wanted to tech into Templar and Fleet Beacon. This got scouted at about the 6-minute mark. Let's see if we can figure out when that carrier Templar transition finishes up. I do like the double cannons here, actually. I think this is somewhat okay. I'm not sure where this gas isn't being saturated. Okay, here comes the Templar Archives. Huge fan of this. This also makes no sense, by the way. Like the entire transition of Templar Archives at this point makes no sense because you're playing a low gas build order. Like you're playing off of currently 2 gases, while you're taking a fourth and a fifth gas and not having the third saturated. And then you're pretending like you can actually tech into Storm or Archons. Like, you have 900 minerals in the bank and 74 gas. By the time you have enough gas for a Templar, your opponent will be on 5 bases with 95 drones. Like, you just simply don't have the resources to get Templar with Storm out right now, while also trying to, get some other things, like the necessary sentries, which, in my mind, you probably want to get 1 or 2 at this point. It probably would be useful against someone that is... I'm actually not quite sure what this is either. This build, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense, because this is a low drone, late third base, double Evo build. So I can understand being confused by this, seeing all the information being confused, but the thing is, Table wasn't confused. He was fairly certain of what was happening here, right? He said, okay, I think I'm being all in. Well, he didn't say he was being all in. He said there was little drones on the third base. His response to that was carriers and Storm. So he scouted it at 6 minutes, don't forget. Start Storm at 7 minutes and 40 seconds. So that is about a minute and 40 seconds later. Then Storm starts, and that will take, without Chrono Boost, about 80 seconds. So if this all-in were to hit anywhere within the next 2 minutes after being scouted, the response to the all-in would not have been ready to the all-in. So it's not a good response then, because most all-ins, if you manage to scout them, will hit within the next 15, 20 to 30 seconds. Your opponent is giving you 3 times as much time, or 4 times as much time than you ever really should be getting. Like, this is not a fair response to an all-in. Also, my initial suspicions of you not understanding what the Hero Gateway Man build is have been confirmed. This is not the Hero Gateway Man. This is just standard Zealot, Stalker, Storm, which people have been playing for 12 years or 13 years. Like, it is just a rush into Templars to get Storm out, because Storm beats basically everything the Zerg has that isn't a Lurker, an Ultra, or a Brute Lord. Like, this is something that people do. They pretend like they're playing something that they aren't. This is not the hero build. It is not close to the hero build. It doesn't resemble the hero build. The only thing that you and the hero build have in common is that you build a Stargate and some gateway units. That is it. There's no second forge. There's no aggression. There has been literally no run-bys, no nothing. As I say that, of course, a run-by gets sent out. I actually can't believe this crap. Oh, no, it's not a run-by. This is the entire army moving towards the left side. Then this Ling run-by, and then you'll F2 back home. Or you lose the fourth base. 2 options here. Or warp it. This is actually the correct response. I said nothing. That was not Table. I was being too negative there, and I apologize for that. That was uncalled for. My sincere apologies. Alright, let's take a look at this fight. Roaches and Hydras in position. Alright. A move into this army. Some solid decision making there. Let's just assess the situation once more here. Like, just while we attack, let's see if there's any clue as to how this fight would go. Now, what are the things we usually look at? Army size, army composition, upgrades. Upgrades, we're down. Army size, we're down. Composition, well, we have Zealots going to be fighting into Roach Hydra without any splash, without any immortals, without any zone control, or did you call that zone control? Force fields, like a map control, I guess, without the ability to easily cut off parts of the army. So at this point, that should be, well, abundantly clear in my mind. Absolutely abundantly clear. But it is not the Table. Table moves in, loses all of his Zealots, and then says, you know what? Now that I've lost all my Zealots, might be a good time to retreat. And decides to just shift-click back home. Luckily for Table, he already has the 1 Templar. Ooh, look at that. Is that the first one we have? Yeah, first Templar. So he had Storm a little bit earlier. Let's say at the 9-minute mark, there was 1 Templar with Storm. Great response to the all-in that should have hit at like the 6-minute mark. Fantastic stuff. 3 minutes late. When it comes to the carrier transition, which was a response to the low drone count, let's not forget about that, we finally finished our fleet beacon. So that is 4 minutes after the initial scout of the all-in. The response is started. We're halfway through our response to the all-in right now. Halfway. Fantastic stuff. Absolutely brilliant. This is what I live for. What was that noise? Oh, that was a stasis word, I think. That's very loud in my ear. No map vision, by the way, except for this one zealot here on the right side. Nothing here, nothing here, nothing here, nothing at the rocks. Every single way of being attacked is not being scouted right now by table. So everything is a surprise. Everything. Literally every little thing would be surprising to table right now. Links coming from this angle. Oh, a surprise. The entire army being here. 10 lurkers popping in between your natural 3rd and 4th base. Oh, massive surprise. Like, it's great to be easily surprised if people are hosting a surprise party for you, but it's not so great if you're playing a competitive game of StarCraft 2, my friend. You need information in order to win. Oh, well, the army. Where did that come from? I wish I had tools to figure it out, like putting a zealot on the map. But no, that wouldn't be possible. Loses 20 zealots before the fight starts. Then storms the entire army, which is the correct call. My tone of the voice made it sound like that was incorrect, but storming was actually very good, and I like that as well. And then destroys the army. If you were to look at this fight, okay, and just analyze it from start to finish, I don't think it's possible to come to the conclusion that the Hydra was too strong here. Literally, Protoss lost half their army for free, then threw down 4 spells, and killed every single Hydra inside. Then all there was left was roaches, and the carriers and zealot cleaned that up as well. And all of that despite the Zerg being up in upgrades. So I look at that fight and I think to myself, yeah, seems pretty fine. I built a tier 3 unit. I invested a lot of gas and time and resources into these Templar, and this all paid off so far. I think you can pretty much say that this composition works against the opponent's composition. Now, of course, there are some caveats. The moment you're playing against someone with better upgrades than you, your units will perform worse. And you could say, yeah, but my thing is supposed to beat his, and the composition. Yes, composition is very important, but upgrades also are very important. Imagine you're fighting someone, and he has a sword, and you have a shield. Now, whenever he tries to hit you with his sword, you might want to put your shield in front of your face or your body to protect it, because, otherwise you get killed, and that's not very nice. Now, if your shield is made of twigs and branches and plants, despite the correct response to a sword usually being putting the shield in front, with this particular shield, it is so weak that the sword might just be capable of getting through it and actually damaging you. So despite you having the correct counter to your opponent's weapon, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're also going to be winning the fight. And that's going to be the same with carriers. If your opponent is on 3-3 with Hydra and a couple of roaches in there for some ground unit tanking, and your carriers have +1, yeah, the fight is just going to be difficult because your opponent just has way more power. Like, that is also kind of this is one of the lines you use, no? That's how the game is supposed to work. For the amount of money and time carriers cost to make, the idea that 2/2 Hydras beat +1 carriers with high Templar support is beyond stupid. If that's the case, the game is indeed broken. Well, first of all, I'd argue that so far it kind of has been shown that carriers with high Templar support perform very, very well against Hydras. But even if it were the case that, these Hydra splits are a bit better and there's 3-3 upgrades, and then the +1 carriers lose, I don't think that would mean that the game is broken. It just shows that there are multiple areas in the game where you can be ahead and behind it. I think that's a very healthy thing for a game. If the moment someone gets a certain unit out, completely hard counters the opponent's composition, it just isn't as interesting anymore. You're just hard countering each other's composition. There needs to be very many variables in the game for it to have interesting fights. And that is the case in StarCraft 2. I think that is a good thing. I don't think that's a bad thing. And I definitely do not believe that makes the game broken whatsoever. Okay, now, next fight. We have 9 carriers, 8 Templar, and 39 Hydras. We hit 1 storm. I see a bit of a move back. A couple extra interceptors going to be taken out here. A couple of extra storms. 2 more storms hitting. 1 on the Hydras, 1 on the Roaches. Seems like a pretty decent fight to me. I think this looks very, very good here for the Protoss, honestly. That wasn't the greatest storm, but it shouldn't really matter either. Yeah, pretty much pushes this back. Kills like about 30 Hydras. Loses nothing. But this is, yeah, needs a storm again. Like the storm support is a pretty important part of the carrier High Templar army. Because carriers by themselves, especially this poorly upgraded, wouldn't perform insanely well against Hydras, right? And here what you want to be doing is, rather than sending in 5 interceptors at a time when they're being rebuilt, is just leave the carriers back for a bit. You warp in some zealots as like cannon fodder, and you use the Templar to kind of zone out some of these Hydras. That is a very important thing to do, because that way you can rebuild the interceptors. If you're just going in every single time with 3 or 4 interceptors, yeah, you're never going to be building up a superior interceptor count. Move command, missing a storm, missing another storm. More interceptors just being given away for free. Storm, storm, storm. Storm, 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 storm. Hello, I know we have storms. I find it very difficult to believe that none of these storms are hitting. Don't we have any storms there? Oh, did he just morph all of his Templar into Archons? That is not a good call. And now there's only 5 inside. This is the worst way to lose, by the way. Like, legit, I'm not even sure if it's over yet. How many gateways do we have? 11. Big salad warp in. Move the carriers back so you don't lose them. Like, I look at this fight and I think to myself, yes, 2-2 Hydras beat Interceptors. How to win with Hydras? Well, the Hydras are... the Hydras are 2-2. Oh, it's over. Very nice. The Hydras are 2-2. The Protoss, it has 2 cybernetics cores. Okay, it has +2 at this point as well, but no more Interceptors. And went pure carrier without using the Templar in the most important part of the fight. So when there was a lot of Hydras and they killed all the ground units. Now they're just fighting pure Interceptors. At this point, you want to storm for 2 major reasons. The first reason is that Hydras have very low HP, and thus if a storm actually hits, it will kill them very quickly, and then the Interceptors can kind of come after. The way you want to do it is you want to use your storms to zone out the Hydras, and then you want to use your Interceptors to kind of clear them up in a way. You don't want to first lose all your Interceptors, because then the micro against the storm will be easier. Another reason why you want a storm is because it forces the Hydra player to not fight with your units, or lose them, basically. He'll need to lose DPS to micro away from the storm, or the Hydras will simply just die. So that's why you always just want to be kind of occasionally be throwing a storm here and there, not 7 at the same time, but 1 and then another one. And you want it's important that they hit the Hydras as well. I saw 4 or 5 storms there that either hit like half a roach or 2 Hydras, or they just hit, a poor critter that was accidentally walking by. They're just minding his own business in the wild. Sees a fight, like, oh, that looks interesting. A storm on his face. Although I'm not actually sure if storm kills critters, now that I think about it. Probably does. Yeah, you just lost all of your Interceptors here without using any of the storms. All the other fights where you had storms and carriers together, you pretty much won. Even the start of the final fight went very well. Your opponent had to rebuild 26 Hydras at once, while you basically lost like, maybe 6 or maybe 8 supply or something like this. Like, all the fights were really good. You just had one extremely bad fight, and then you died. And this also was against an opponent that was extremely all-in with a very high army supply. You could have built cannons against this, could have built more batteries. You could have maybe done a little bit of a zealot run by while this was happening to force some of the units back. There's a lot, or to stop the reinforcements from instantly going to the main army. There were a lot of things you could have done, but I don't think that this really proves that Hydras are the hard counter to Templar carrier. Not at all. Like, the Zerg player trades extremely poorly for a very long time until you completely throw a fight, and then you're like, oh, Hydras are too strong when you didn't storm whatsoever. Like, you can't say that Templar carrier isn't good enough if you don't use your Templar correctly and you don't use your carriers correctly. That has nothing to do with the unit and has everything to do with you. On top of that, you had no map vision, had no harassment, no static defense whatsoever, and your upgrades were slow. All of that together, you suck. And that's just the way it is. Alright, my friends, that's going to be it for today's episode of Is It Imba? Or Do I Suck? If you did enjoy this one, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hopefully I'll see all of you next time for a new video here on the Harstem channel. Bye bye.